Welcome to New Eden, traveler. I'm Katia Say, and I'll be your guide on this journey of exploration. Over the course of my near decade of travel around the cluster, I saw things that I had only dreamed about as a child. Sights that left me in awe of the beauty and majesty that is New Eden, and the crushing devastation that humanity could bestow upon themselves and others. There were many who inspired me along my journey, but only one I aspired to be like, Mark 726 of Eve Travel. His holoblog was a terrific guide to every new region I encountered, and I hope to bring it to life for you in this series. Join us as we explore and share with you some of the most fascinating sights the cluster has to offer, from humanity's humble beginnings to whispers of tales shrouded in mystery that have become near legend. I hope you'll join us in this endeavor to explore our universe together. Somewhere, something wonderful is waiting to be found.
Welcome to Talking in Stations. It's a podcast about EVE Online. I am Matterall here on December 12th. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the Luminaire Snowball fight that's coming up this Sunday. We'll also get into the production changes that happened last Tuesday and talk about those in a comprehensive way about what actually the reaction was from players. We'll also talk about the Winter Nexus event, which is actually just started. So I'd like to say welcome to our panelists. Kenneth, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
All right. With us, we have Commander A9, and he is he's the organizer of the Snowball fight that happens in Luminaire. How's it going, Commander?
Good morning. I'm doing absolutely fantastic, and I have some beautiful developments for y'all.
Great. We'll cover those in just a second. Also, we have Nick by.
Hey, good day, everybody, and hope you're having a good Sunday.
All right, Commander A's, take it away. What's going on with the Luminaire Snowball fight?
All right. So, after the last Talking in Stations podcast aired, I was contacted by one of our big contributors who supported us over the last several years of the Snowball fight, a pilot named Anatane Diva. Anatane Diva gifted us exactly 1 million snowballs in a single contract. This covers our fight, as well as the next upcoming Snowball fights, probably for the next several years. Secondly, CCP Convict covered the Luminaire Snowball fight in the December 3rd episode of the Community Beat, calling the fight epic and expected. Two terms to me which are very humbling. Convict also confirms that the next episode of The Pulse will feature coverage of the Snowball fight, and CCP will be live streaming the Snowball fight on their Twitch channel. This has transcended every expectation that I have ever had for this event, and I can't tell you how grateful I am. CCP has pulled out all the stops on this one. CCP Falcon, Guard, Logibro, Dragon, Convict, all the game masters and the developers and engineers and community organizers who have worked behind the scenes have turned this event from its inception into something that has just blown everything I ever anticipated about this event completely away. The live events community like Gridaris and Super General have been just staunch supporters of us for years, and it has just rendered me speechless every time something like this rolls in. And we're on the cusp of having an amazing fight this year, and I am really excited.
Some of those CCPers aren't there anymore. Is that last year's script?
No, that these are developers who have supported us over the years since we started. Okay. Yeah, over the years since we started. Falcon and Logibro were the first two, and then as the fight got bigger, Guard was brought in, and then Dragon, when he was community organized, was brought in, and when Dragon moved on, Convict stepped up, and Convict is now my primary point of contact for organizing the Snowball fight as well as other events. But credit where credit is due, I felt they deserved to be recognized, so.
Where does this take place, and how do you participate?
This will be in the system of Luminaire. Specifically, it will be over the Moon 6 Federation Navy Assembly Plant Space Station. If you want to participate, just show up. If you need a festival launcher and snowballs, you just dock and you contact me, and you will get a festival and snowballs for free. If you want to participate in the Secret Santa exchange, then you bring an appropriate qualifying gift to Luminaire or as close to Luminaire as possible. Contract it directly to Commander A9 with the label of Secret Santa in the contract. If you want to participate in the light show competitions, then you bring a ship with modules that create a visual effect, such as lasers, fireworks, repair modules, drones, and we'll go to one of the asteroid belts, we'll set up the displays, and then we will judge the displays, and whichever displays are the most attractive or the most glorious looking, the top pilots will win prizes.
Yeah, I put in a plug for this patch we just had. Some of the new laser effects from mining are pretty cool looking, especially the gas huffing, although you probably can't do that in the asteroid belt. But some of the new laser crystal effects are pretty cool.
I've seen the ice mining effects for this winter Hexus event, which looks pretty fantastic. So I'm definitely excited to see what kind of changes we can get.
How did last year go? And what do you expect as far as people this time? Do you have any indication?
I haven't gotten any word as to how many we're going to get this year, although as of last year or perhaps the year before, I can't remember when it started, but I was encouraged by CCP developers to actually put in a fleet fight notification request with the number of pilots we anticipated, since the event was just getting that big. So this year, Super General contacted CCP, since he's one of the CEOs for live events, on my behalf, and he put in the fleet fight notification request. We were shooting for upwards of 400 or 500 pilots, just to make sure we covered all of our bases. Other than that, we had at peak in Luminaire last year 395 pilots at any one time.
Awesome. All right. Well, it looks like getting a ton of support from CCP for this Snowball fight. Happens when? Sunday?
Sunday, December 19th, 2100 Eve time, right in Luminaire.
Awesome. All right.
Make sure you get that fleet fight notification in the day before, because they're all automated now. So you have to do it the downtime before, and then at downtime it'll get processed and it'll happen.
Roger that. I'll make sure our contacts know.
All right. Awesome, Commander. Thanks very much for stopping by and telling us about this, and good luck with your Snowball fight.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, next we're going to move to A little bit of news here from what is it? Signal Cartel. Sorry, I kept thinking Syndicate. Signal Cartel, in that the Thera wormhole locations are now being republished. The Thera wormhole locations were actually taken down because they were infiltrated by people from Snuff, and it didn't go very well for them because their overlords in Snuff were really mad about that, which is kind of interesting because, you know, a lot of PvPers use those too. It's not just people who are, you know, moving things around. It's people who are hunting that use Thera quite a bit. And without those public wormhole locations, they have to do their own scanning, which takes a lot of time, and PvPers may not want to do that. So I thought it was kind of funny. There was a remark in Reddit where the people who did it, who were anonymous and remain anonymous, who infiltrated, and what they did is they took all the locations and they diverted them to, or they took over all the bookmarks that were public and they diverted them to a place where they were ambushing people. So they had a great laugh about that. So when Signal Cartel noticed that, they said, we've been hacked, and they shut everything down. And then, again, these people were anonymous that did it. And then their own guys in Snuff got really mad at them. I guess middle management took, or I guess whoever did it took a beating from the leaders of Snuff, who were like, what are you doing? We need that. So I thought that was kind of funny. Kind of a weird invulnerability, right? To be valuable to the people likely to harm you.
Well, it's free work, and Thera is a massive superhighway. When you live somewhere and you need to get somewhere else to get to a fight, it can prove incredibly value to travel through that system, to go system to system across Eve in a very rapid fashion. So, I mean, there is definite benefit to having those bookmarks available in the fact that you don't have to do that work every day.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, the next thing before we get to the CSM and the patch and all that stuff, let's go over what's in the Winter Nexus. Let me bring Commander A9 back in. How's it going again, Commander?
Yep, I'm still here.
All right, cool. We're going to go over Winter Nexus. Volatile ice storms, and that is where a lot of this stuff happens. So you'll want to find those on the map. You can do that with some of the filtering that comes with the map. And if you find the ice storms, you can either filament in. Some of those filaments will be on the market, or they're given out as login rewards. And that gets you into combat anomalies, data sites, and also ice fields. So you can mine in the ice fields or look for data sites, that's exploration, or you can do combat in anomalies. And they're in low sec, high sec, and in null sec. And the most lucrative ones actually aren't in null sec, they're in low sec. So I've heard there's a lot of camping going on with that.
I'm not surprised. And yeah, I have heard that the more lucrative sites are in low sec. I think CCP's been trying to encourage more combat in low sec, and perhaps that these events like this aren't developed or dominated by the major null sec groups. But me personally, I've been processing the event mostly in high sec, and I was able to complete it in a couple of days, and it's pretty challenging, even for experienced pilots who have skills that are maximized. If you're not paying attention, then you'll find yourself in your pod real fast.
Yeah, so the sites themselves are challenging, and then you have some players who may want to intercept you on the way back to the market to sell off your loot. So those are the two risky things. The thing was, last year, this was a very, very, I said this before, lucrative event where they put in a lot of good loot. Basically, you could sell for a lot of money. So there, people made a ton of money. We looked at it on the monthly economic report in January, made a ton of money during this time. So you'll want to be involved with this if you can. It is the holiday spirit, and CCP puts a lot of extra reward into this one.
Yes, I do. Cerebral accelerators especially go for a lot of money, especially the ones that last you upwards of 3 to 6 days, depending upon how high your biology skill is. The skins, of course, the clothes that they give out, and A lot of really nifty items.
Well, the overseer effects, I think, are the ones that vary. Those are the ones that can be turned in. Those are also from Wormhole Space, aren't they? Or they might be. But those are the ones, or they were Triglavian rewards, I think. Those are the ones that can vary in price. So you can get one that's worth a few million. You can get one that's worth hundreds of millions. So you want to check those out.
Just stockpile those.
All right. Season rewards are also in there, and daily challenge stuff like missions to go throw snowballs. So get your daily reward in Luminaire Sunday. And those are just little errands that you get to run for daily prizes. You also get login rewards for 13 days, called the 13 Days of Nexus. And that's got some skill point injectors and some boosters and skins. But the boosters are basically, they kind of enhance lasers. So if you have laser specialties, that helps. Afterburners as well, and some overheating reductions in damage. If you overheat your modules, you'll have a reduction. Also in there is some skins. I think they're called Aurora. Help me out here.
Aurora
Nick.
Universalis.
Universalis, yeah. Aurora Universalis. And that's based on the Northern Lights, which you can see from Iceland sometimes. Beautiful skins, and they are rewards as you log in. Okay, there's also Winter Abyssal Proving Grounds, which is arena-type gameplay where you can fight. There's going to be 3 types of matches over a period of time. So December 10th through 14th will be one type, and that is 2 versus 2 assault frigates. Then on December 18th, there'll be 1 versus 1 Navy frigates. And then there's a break for a few days, and you'll have from the end of the year, December 31st to January 4th, you'll have T1 cruisers free for all for 4 people. So that's what happened there. There's also a festive Yule Star bundle, which is something you can buy off it. And that has some goodies in it, including some skins, some skill points, the usual stuff. I've heard these are actually quite good. They're definitely worth it. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's a little too generous, but this one I've heard is on the generous side. So you might want to look at that. Also, there's a skin giveaway that is in addition to a merch store purchase. So if you buy a mug from the EVE Online store, you can get some extra skins there, or a hat, or whatever they have to offer. So you might want to check that out. And then those skins are actually called Operation Permafrost skins. And you can get one for these ships: Merlin, Omen, Hurricane, or Megathron. So those are the ships that you might be able to get a skin for. All right, cool. A couple more things here from player news. Carneros has done an update for returning players, and you can catch him on CCP TV on Twitch. And what he does is show players how things have changed. So if you've been gone a year or two, you might want to catch Carneros on CCP's channel for Twitch, so he can answer your questions on what has changed and how you could adapt to those changes. So it's for players who are returning, not necessarily new players, but I'm sure they're welcome to watch as well.
I was actually watching that yesterday, I believe, and I found it very enlightening. So he really does a good job of going into detail to help people out, so that they, if they find themselves logged in and surrounded in a station that they don't recognize, they don't end up accidentally undocking and blowing themselves up. Welcome back.
Yeah. Okay, the next story is Hirr joins Pandemic Horde. I think we covered this last week, or maybe it was Monday. And Hirr is an old corporation. I think they were in Morsis Mihi. Or were they in Razor? They were in Morsis Mihi, right?
Morsis Mihi.
Long time ago. For those who don't know, Morsis Mihi was kind of the block leader, I would say, from the Northern Coalition, which was the original Northern Coalition, kind of owned. And they were partners with Razor and a few other alliances, and they formed a big block that was basically, what would you characterize the Northern Coalition as? They seemed to be like everybody's target at one time.
Yeah, Vuk Lau was kind of the semi-leader of it, and he, sometimes he ran his mouth a little bit, from what I understand, and he ticked some people off, and yeah, whatever. And then I still have a little GIF of a couple ducks running around a parking lot, and it was like NC and somebody chasing each other around in circles. And then a car drives by, and it's got little PL logo on the car, and it just runs the duck over.
I think I've seen that one, that meme.
Yeah, that's just kind of the thing. There was near the end there was a couple fights, and PL back then dropped dreads, and dreads back then weren't nearly what they are now, but they just absolutely roasted a bunch of stuff. And then it was probably a couple months later, PL dropped dreads again, or PL dropped Titans, and it was a Y dash system. And they targeted Vuklau's Titan, deleted that thing in about 3 seconds, and then proceeded to lose a whole bunch of Titans after that. I know Elise lost one. CCP Swift lost I think it was his first or his second Titan then. I don't remember if he lost one of the first one Y dash or not, but yeah, that didn't go so well. So then you ticked PL off, and yeah, that didn't work out for him in the long run.
Yeah. Oh, so there's a few notable fights. Now that was an empire that was big and I would say relatively benign. Like they were not expansionist. I don't think they went to mess with people. I don't think their rhetoric was very hot, not nearly compared to the empires that we have now. But what you had was a group of essentially very big alliances that grouped up and took over the north, and they were harassed quite a bit by groups like Pandemic Legion, sometimes Triumvirate, and essentially Northern Coalition Dot, which is what we have now. When we talk about NC, we talk about Northern Coalition Dot. They were basically a meme name based after this original. So that group had Morsis Mihi as the centerpiece, and Hirr was one of the big industrial corporations from there. That's what they were, kind of industry empire builders. They eventually fell. When they fell, it was because they had really angered Russian neighbors in drone regions who united and marched on them. But another factor was that the Russians had made a deal with the then Goon Swarm that was just barely reconstituting after they self-destructed in Decline in that area. That was known as the CFC, I think it was the CFC. No, it was actually, they were called the Decline Coalition because that's where they lived with Test. So Goons and Test were living together. Test was just being born basically at that time, and Goons were recovering from self-destruction. And so that was the beginning of the Decline Coalition. But when the Northern Coalition was under attack from Russians, there was a deal struck by Goonswarm and the Russians to basically not to fight each other. So therefore, the neighbors, the Decline Coalition neighbors, didn't help Northern Coalition, and when they failed, they were able to pluck a lot of groups out of Northern Coalition, saying, "Hey, you don't need to go away. Just move over to us, and we'll form the CFC." That was the Clusterfuck Coalition, and that's how that started. So there was a deal between the leader of, I think it was Red Alliance, or UX Death. UX Death. That was him, and Matani, and they basically said, "We'll pick over the bones of our former neighbor and friends." So that's one of the ways that CFC actually constituted. And since then, Goonswarm have been in the middle of this big coalition. Goonswarm was really not in the middle of coalitions before that. They were more like partners in Red Swarm or whatever. There was more like, you're a misfit, we're a misfit too, let's join together. But after the Northern Coalition fell, that's when you had Goonswarm really kind of run a coalition, and because they built it. And so that was how the CFC was born. CFC later turned into the Imperium when it had a name change. And some people moved around. Obviously, Test fell out of that. All right, so there's a little bit of history for you. And in the middle of that was Hirr, this corporation, which is now moved. I think Hirr actually made it to we can look at their history, but they made it over to Pandemic Legion. They made it over to Northern Coalition for a while. I think they were even in, let's look here. So they were in Against All Authorities. That's where they went. Strong group at the time. They did go to Razor. That's why I get them confused. So they were in both Mor Smihi and Razor. Then they went to NC and Test. Yeah, they got inactive in NC and then went to Test.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they had joined PL.
Yeah, my bad. So they're now in PL. That's the first time they've ever. Cool.
They're in Pandemic Horde.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. Pandemic Horde. I thought they were in Pandemic Legion. So where'd they jump from? Oh, from Test. Okay. So the significance of this currently, and the reason this is probably in the news, besides her being an important corporation, is that Test lost its coalition called the Legacy Coalition after this latest war in August. And so this is further evidence that Test is losing some key players. I don't know if they're still key, but they're losing her. So that's that. All right. Thanks again, Commander. We're gonna shift over to talk about. We still don't have our other CSM guys. They were told they should be coming here at any time, but Kenneth, we've been here before. We're talking about the patch. Has anything changed since the last conversations that we've had, or should we start from the beginning? What do you think?
That's up to you. The one thing that has changed since, during our last conversation was the fact that the Orca was going to get kind of put back to where it was. And you're going to need the Tech 2 Indie Core, but the mining yield will go back to roughly where it was. I think a couple % increase. And I believe that actually went in the game. I'm pretty sure it was in the patch notes. So that's a fairly big change since we kind of talked last, or it happened while we were talking, but it actually went into the game since then.
Okay, cool. All right, so then let's go back. That's an important point, pain points that people were still talking about that I was in touch with, some miners.
Let me say something to Dunk real quick. Dunk, I'm sorry, bud. The Procure is probably the least favorite thing about this whole patch for me. The EHP just isn't there, and it got nerfed harder than anything else due to the drop in Tech 1 strips. I don't care for either one of those changes. I know why it happened, but that is definitely the biggest regret from all these changes, that I couldn't have a bigger influence and stop that from happening. There was just no good options there, and that's the one that CCP chose.
So the question that you just answered, we'll play Jeopardy here. We asked the question after the answer, is the Procure got nuked. So you're not happy with the way the Procure came out.
Well, not nuked, but it didn't.
Those are his words.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, those are Dunk's words. But okay, so let's go back to the beginning here. We have patch notes version 1911. That's not a date. That's actually a version number. And these are the mining changes that were pretty substantial that came through. Call it a patch, call it an update, call it an expansion even. But this
You're
expansion
on number 2, so that's the second set of patch notes. They ran out of room on the first set. They physically can't put any more words on that page, so they had to make a number 2. So they start after the patch.
Wow!
Just so you know, I'm not sure if you
I've never
that
seen
or
that.
not.
No,
because they've never run out of patch, because for the industry patch they put everything in the big Excel sheet. For this patch, they tried not to do that and put everything in the patch notes, and they ran out of words.
Yeah, that's a huge patch. I've never seen them have to put it on 2 pages before. All right. Well, patch notes, the main things in here have been some ship rebalance, some skill rebalance, and you've seen, of course, all the ore more or less get doubled with some exceptions. And you've also seen mining sped up. Some of the ship balance changes that have happened is the command ships that are the booster ships have actually overly efficient miners. Now they're efficient enough, but they're not as overly efficient as they used to be. And all this is in service of trying to get the ecosystem back into balance as the way CCP has it envisioned. And that is where basically ships aren't too cheap. Ships aren't, some ships are more expensive than others, and there's a huge of area for people to specialize and reap better rewards if they want to put the effort and the skill points in. That's basically the bottom line for these patches. This one and the one that happened in the spring. Some people call it scarcity, but that's a player word. Kenneth?
Yeah, you're cutting out. You're dropping there at the end, so I didn't actually hear the question.
Let's try again with push talk here. The scarcity is something that players use. That's the player named word or description of this era.
Yeah, so CCP started this off by creating the shortage, and that was their term. And when they doubled all the minerals and this kind of stuff, CCP have said that this is the end of shortage. And so you can kind of assume from that when they doubled all the ore, doubled all the ice, doubled all the gas, basically they doubled everything except for, I think, a little bit of mercoxit, maybe some crocite. I don't really remember from the notes, but they doubled near 98% of everything in the game. Doubled everything from moons, which some people who you would not expect have had a hard time dealing with some of that. But they're saying that this is the end of shortage. The compression stuff got kicked down the road, so we're still going to have to deal with that. But the next big thing coming is dynamic distribution. That's been a little label in a few blogs now. No one really knows what that means, but you can kind of infer from that yourself what you think it might mean. But now that there's plenty of ore out there and plenty of stuff to extract from the environment, now the next thing's dynamic distribution. So you can kind of think about where that may lead you.
Nick, you're a miner. What do you think?
Well, I'm getting used to it. It's different. We went out, my little moon popped yesterday evening, and where generally I can't mine it out. Me and a couple other folk, because it's a 2-week pull, and basically we just don't have time. We all tossed in the Tech 2A crystals, and from fairly late last night, mining for a few hours, and then this morning for another 90 minutes, we yanked in over 5 million M3, and over half the belt's gone. And so I'm like, it's a hell of a lot more than we used to get. Granted, we blew up a lot with the residue, which makes an interesting dynamic of watching where you'd throw everybody on one rock and just pound it down, and your survey scanner would give you really good information for when it was going to go away. Well, if you got 8 lasers on one rock, that's a crapshoot. So you end up spreading the folk out as best you can. It's changing the dynamic of how we moon mine. On the asteroid belt side, those are all in a big ball instead of in a crescent, or the ones in the area where I'm at anyway. So my initial bookmarks warping in, figured, I'll just pop in, check this out. All right, when you land your whole fleet inside of a Veldspar rock, it's the only time I've ever had an orca go 12 kilometers a second when it took off out of there. So it's just going to take a little bit of gamesmanship to figure out the best method of cracking that sphere of ore.
Yeah, we talked to a different miner earlier today. He's loving this patch, and I've asked him 2 or 3 times, be honest, and he's like, I love this patch. This patch is great. He and his guys, I believe there's a small group of them, maybe 10, I forget. And he says that they're able to mine basically like 30% faster. Why should he dislike this patch? You know? So that his mining gang's doing very well with this.
With A-type crystals, you basically have 45% more ore available to you than what you had pre-patch. And that's after accounting for all the waste. Now, that's standard RNG type waste, but basically pre-patch, whatever you had available, you'll have 45% more available that will go in your cargo hold than you had pre-patch if you use A-type crystals.
Yeah, and that's actually hit nail on the head of why we chose the A-type over the B. B might be a higher yield, but a potentially higher residue. And we've been tracking through the ledgers, checking out what the residue loss rate is. And it matches up really, within margin of error percentage-wise of the advertised amounts. So far, pulling a good chunk more ore. The ice field thing, I don't know if that's corrected yet or not. I didn't get a chance to go look in the ice fields this morning.
Just so Johnny Combo says, who is this mystery miner ? So too much information will get people stalked, or you don't want to put a stalker on anybody. But I will say in Discord, his name is Chenky, so you can talk to him here. He's here often, and he can tell you in his own words what I just said. I won't tell you where he mines, although I do know where it is, and it has moved around with his group. I'll let him tell you if you want to talk to him. But yeah, so that was his experience, and you can see Nick has something of a similar experience. So this patch, although met with a lot of resistance, with the help of some CSM members who did some number crunching and some real work on this, and the help of some of the players that were going through the forums, CCP came out and directly thanked those people for helping them make a better patch. And it's still getting worked on, as you can see with the Orca changes that happen. So it's actually kind of a cool thing for the little guy, kind of a cool thing for the mid-scale miner. So who are the people that are hurt? Because I still feel like some people are feeling this as a step backwards, not a step towards away from scarcity.
Well, the biggest revelation for the patches, the Oracle was nerfed 33% across the board, just whacked straight at the knees, just straight bonus was removed. And so anybody who had a large amount of Workles and relied on them heavily for the majority of their mining would definitely be affected the most. And also on the flip side of that, any group who used a large amount of barges or exhumers would feel the most benefit from this change, because those all got buffed on the high end. They all got buffed about 30 to 35%, with the exception of the Procure. Yes, I know, but there's still an update for compression coming. I'm hoping to get the Procure looked at. A few of the frigates, the Endurance, the Venture, and I forget the name of the third one, and the Porpoise. So I'm hoping to be able to try and advocate for a few changes there. And then everybody on the patch kind of, if depending on where your group sits from Rorqual to barges and exhumers, kind of the more happier you are. The closer you are to the barge exhumer side, the closer you are to being happy. The closer you are to the Rorqual side, the chances are you're less happy.
All right, what about the little guy that we all care about? The newer miner.
Well, I put a couple of the newer guys that were in the super tanky Procures, and we re-outfitted with retrievers, mainly because you can mix your tank a little bit, and it's got a really nice ore hold. If they're not that concerned about it right now.
Yeah, as far as new players too, the skill in Crystal Squish took 15 skills and 15 different crystal types, Tech 1 and Tech 2, and squished them down to 4 different types, 4 different categories of crystals and skills. And then on the low end of that, the high sec specific, the Feldspar, Scordite, Pyro, and Plagio, what was it, 256,000 skill points it saved, Nick? I think something like that, maybe 512. And then the next group up saved almost 1 million skill points, I think, from there. And then the next group up saved a little bit more. But basically, when a new player gets in the game, they would have to train Feldspar, then Scordite, then Plagio in order to be able to use the crystals and mine the stuff around them. Now they train one skill, and that skill trains quicker than all 4 of the other ones combined. And then now they only need 1 crystal, and they can mine basically anything in high sec. So it lowered the complexity, it lowered the skill requirements to mine, and overall, I'm hoping it's a better experience for the new players. Now, on the high end, all they did was make a category, and the amount of skill points that you had in those 4 types of ore combined, that's just the new number. So you don't save any skill points on the high end, but once you're training Arcanor and Bisto, you're not really a new player anymore. You're in nullsec, and you're mining the higher end rocks. So that's how you end up.
Got it. All right, we're going to bring in for contrast Dunk Dinkle. And Dunk is on the other side of this as far as people who feel like this patch wasn't a very good patch for, I'll let him describe who it's not good for. How's it going, Dunk? Dunk is former CSM member too, by the way. There's that. Yeah, we see your camera's starting to come on. There you are. All right, so for some balance, since maybe we're painting too rosy a picture for your taste and some of the other people, why don't you tell us what you don't like and see what we can talk about here?
Well, I spent a bunch of time when it was released on the test server. I spent a bunch of time on the test server actually doing it for real before I made up any kind of conclusion about whether it was good or bad. And that said, though, you have historically fallen on the side of don't mess the logistic gameplay for nullsec. Like, I haven't really heard you ever. What I have advocated is do not make Eve weaponized inconvenience, and that weaponized inconvenience is a repeated design change that has happened over the last several years. So it's not specifically logistics. It's when you take a task and make it harder for simply the sake of making it harder, where you're not creating a new thing for someone to do, you're just making it more painful to do the task. I don't think that's good for a video game.
But we've done that with NPCs. We've made them harder because it's more challenging, so more specialization.
What NPC is hard?
Well,
they triple box burners. They run incursions like cash machines. Everything is wired in NPCs.
They didn't start out.
Cable runs the Satoyos like clockwork. Like, there's no NPC thing that isn't completely figured out.
The infested carrier is certainly giving people a run for their money. That's deleted a lot of marauders lately.
Okay, one out of how many, right? But in general, players have solved the NPC gameplay.
Right, and they'll solve the mining gameplay too. They didn't start out triple boxing.
No. How do you solve moving fuel blocks around? How do you solve liquid ozone getting bigger? How do you solve some of these logistical things that continue to be simply, we've made it harder to do this because we think maybe by making it harder, groups won't expand so much. Maybe if we make it harder to anchor a structure, they won't anchor structures so much. Those have not played out the way they intended.
Right.
So getting back harder with mining.
So getting back to this, right? So I spent time before I made any kind of decision about this, right? I did it for real. I wrote an article about it. And what I said was, I'm not against players having to make choices based on like what you want to do at each step of it, right? There's choices about how you fit out your ship. There's choices about what crystals you use for the wastage or residue, whatever they're calling it. And there's choices about compression. But at every step of the game, in implementing those design concepts, which are interesting, good design concepts, the execution has been more weaponized inconvenience. It has been, we will make it more painful for you to do this, And it will mean that behaviors that you have done, investments you have made in the game where you have tried to hone your skills and abilities are now worthless.
What is weaponized inconvenience?
It's simply making a change to the game in which it's harder to do the task simply for the reason of making it harder to do that task, where your time effort is devalued. So rather than spending a half hour doing a task and getting some reward, they've said you're going to spend an hour doing that task to get the same reward, right? And time effort, in my mind, is the fundamental currency of EVE. When you spend time effort, you should have a return on it. And they are devaluing time effort by making you have to spend more time, more effort to do the same thing you did before for less return.
So you're talking about Rorquals then?
Everything in the game is doing this, right?
Yeah, but for the mining change, the Rorquals, I would agree with you. But everything else, all the barges and exhumers, with the exception of the Procure, are about 35% more yield per time.
Yes, in a very theoretical meeting room discussion purposes. Yes,
no, this is practical.
No, that's real.
Just let me finish. Let me finish. Right, in a practical world in which those barges can survive to mine all this stuff, yes, theoretically you can make this money. But when you operate in a world with cloaky camping and bombers that can come in and kill these things before a response fleet can show up, effectively, in reality, you are not getting this same kind of theoretical spreadsheet return on a 200 million investment in a ship. And that's the reality that doesn't get calculated into some of these paper synopsises that get created, right?
Well,
when the ganking ships come in high sec and they kill you, and they have nothing bad happens to any gankers ever, right? That has to be calculated in, and that's not what gets calculated into this, like, I made this much ore. And so my issue, my main issue is this. This patch was supposed to make the player base feel good, that the game had turned a corner, that the game was coming and becoming more fun to play again, and that we were done with having things to be so painful. And I think the player reaction speaks for itself. That is not how it was taken.
What player reaction are we talking about that you're pointing to?
Go on comms. Go on some other comms than TIS Discord, and you will hear people unhappy.
Oh, we had unhappy people here too.
Right.
It wasn't.
So there's unhappy people from the people who do Rorqual mining, which I don't do Rorqual mining, but I would be pretty upset if my 10 billion investment became worthless overnight. Okay, so I'd be unhappy about that. And now I go out and procure, right? I used to have a bait procure, and I can't bait procure anymore, right? So I'm unhappy for just flying my procure around.
Well, first
they
of all,
originally nerfed the Venture.
Everything changed.
It was overnight, effectively. After 2
years.
3 years. Okay, all right. Well,
I'm talking about capitals being
right now.
Rorquals.
Mining in a Rorqual is ridiculous. Putting one on field, unless you're in a super cap umbrella, which is 3 quadrants of the galaxy, is ridiculous. They're going to get killed. So you've made this. The Rorqual boosting is basically here, mega coalitions. Here's the make you feel a little bit better about us taking away some of your mining capability. So,
right.
So again, people want to defend CCP in this, but the player base doesn't see this as a moment of rejoicing that they feel relief. And people should have felt relief when shortage was over. And I don't think that the majority of the player base, if you go talk to them across coalitions, whoever.
How can we measure that, though, instead of conversations that are...
Go have a poll.
No, polls don't do it either.
Okay, well then
how do we measure it statistically? Like, what should we look for?
You can't. Well, look, are players happy? Are players logging in?
But I mean, economically, can we look at
logging in? Are players logging in to play the game right now? No, the war ended. The war ended. The reason to play stopped. And then this was supposed to be the big re-engagement. And we're not seeing like spikes in player numbers to go out in their hulks. It's not happening.
Yeah. So you're saying there's no way to measure if this is true or not. Just talk to people. And that invites a lot of subjectivity, doesn't it? For you and for me.
Absolutely. But look, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a scientist doing a research paper that's going to be peer reviewed. I'm giving you an opinion on CCP's failure in this patch to, one, communicate properly and effectively about what it actually was. When their email went out and said a new age of prosperity, they're setting very, very high expectations because we're not anywhere near a new age of prosperity. So that's a communication failure. In the immediate response,
communication failure is who is we? Like, it seems that you're talking for.
No, this is CCP's email they sent to every player in the game.
I know that. Every player in the game, sure.
Right.
I'm talking about you saying we, like we players. We, like you're co-opting a point of view.
Go read any Evo forum. Go read any Discord thread. Go read any coalition communication system. Mm-hmm. There is not this
my DMs where it says, hey, I'm a goon and I can't put this on Discord or I'll be ostracized from the community, but I love this patch and I'm making more IS than I ever have before.
Yes, I can put as many anecdotes. I can put as many anecdotes up as I want.
We're all talking anecdotes without evidence. Like,
the evidence is the player count. Has the player count spiked?
The player count is are you talking about the PCU measured on EVE Offline?
However you want to do it.
It's been 5 days, 6 days, whatever it is.
Right. And the PCU, excuse me, and the PCU is increased each day.
Okay. So, and then the second thing, failure in communications was in the response, the official responses of CCP in the days after the initial thing, rather than being like, we're listening to you, we're hearing you, we want to know what's going on with you, it was an antagonistic tone from the developers to the players that were expressing concerns. Antagonism, direct, snarky antagonism. Now that is going to rub people. What do you mean, but? What's the excuse for that?
Well, because players are very nice to CCP too, right? Like it's like the players are so beautifully nice to CCP.
You're just using whataboutism, right?
Well, I'm not. If you're being attacked, it's hard. I don't see the snark, first of all, and second, I don't see the players being having kid gloves on when they talk about CCP. They're calling for resignations. Among other things, which we all know is pretty bad, right?
Okay, so do you think CCP communicated these changes well and then had an effective
what I always see.
Do you think they were effective in managing player expectations and handling the response?
I'll answer your question this way. Whenever people complain about a patch that hurts their gameplay, they complain vigorously about it. When it's more or less proven that they shouldn't be in such pain if they just make an adjustment, then they say, well, it was communicated wrong. It's a fallback position.
What do you mean it's a fallback position?
Every time
are you saying that the communication was good? That the goals, the metrics, all of those things were good in this major change to a 2-year process, that they did a good job of communicating to the players the rationale and why everything made sense?
They communicated a long time. Whether players want to listen or not.
No, you're dodging the question. You're dodging the question.
Well,
the release of the new Dawn, they released this thing, and it was so poorly communicated and tested, they had to literally pull out all of compression.
Okay, so I'll answer your question. So for the first time in a long time, and you should know this as a CSM, all the CSM has said for the past probably 5 years is communicate more. So they put out that dev blog extremely early. And as you know from Sissy, if you tested a lot, not everything was finished. A lot of the compression modules didn't work. A lot of it were just icons. Some of the skills weren't there, but they put this out early to let players look at it. And for the first time, you saw a dev blog that I call raw, meaning CSM input not required or desired. The players have been asking for this for years. They finally do it, and then people like you and others basically ridicule them for it. But we want more of this.
I don't think I ridiculed them. I gave them an honest review.
Okay, you just did. But anyway, it was early.
It's not ridiculing.
It was early on, and you got to look. The players got to look behind the curtain. Then the updates came after CSM got involved and started, hey, maybe we can change this, curl this type thing. And then there was an update to the update, an update to the update to the update. And so I think a lot of the communication there could have been better. The other thing is things rapidly changed so fast, Sissy couldn't keep up. And the traits on Sissy never got changed until the patch went live on TQ. So I fielded so many DMs from people that says, hey, my Hulk didn't change. Look at, and they showed me a picture of the show info on the ship. Well, the problem was, I was like, hey, is there a mining hold now? Is there this or that? Yeah. Or what happened to my other 2 slots on the procure? But the ship traits haven't changed, so they haven't changed my ship. Well, they have changed your ship, just the ship traits didn't change. You have to look in the attributes. And I don't think the general average player can look at the attributes of the dogma and figure out what's going on. So in that case, communication was very poor. And I've advocated for next time we have a big change like this, just wipe the traits clean. And because it's just essentially a text box. And then we'll update them when TQ updates. But the attributes did change. However, Sissy just couldn't keep up. So Sissy was always in some state of update to the update behind what was on the forums. And in that case, yes, I agree. Communication could have been better, but if you looked at the attributes, you could figure out where you were. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but for the first time, you got to see stuff much earlier than you normally would. How often has a patch been on Sissy 2 or 3 weeks before patch day? That's almost unheard of in the CCP world. So, yes,
I completely agree with that. I completely agree with it that having it on Sissy is a good thing. But the issue is in the communication of that. They didn't release it on Sissy with a dev blog that said, we'd like you to test this. This is in flux. We're trying to figure this out. They did a full push of, this is New Dawn. It's the name of the quadrant. Here's an email that goes out to all the players on the same day. So before they had kind of like tested this thing, they were announcing the end of shortage and the beginning of this New Dawn era. And that is critical. You can't have it.
All right. I'm going to bring in Suitonia. Let me just bring in Suitonia and Vily, introduce them so they can talk in this too. Go ahead, Dunk, you were saying. Oh, wait. First, Suitonia, how are you doing? Let's hear your voice, Suitonia. All right, Vily, let's hear your voice.
I'm a beautiful butterfly.
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Oh, yes, you are.
Suitonia.
Can you guys not hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Thank you.
We can now.
Welcome to the show.
I'm not sure what's wrong then. I was picking up earlier.
Oh, here we go. So, Dunk, go ahead and take it. You had the floor.
I was just doing my normal rant. But look, I'll just wrap it up for myself, right? The ideas behind what they're trying to do aren't by default bad. The execution is what's frustrating players, right? The lack of clarity and the way it's been done is frustrating to people who engage in this gameplay. And if it's not appealing to the majority of people who do resource gathering, or it's roundly criticized in whatever metric you want to measure it, then they're not communicating what should be a huge positive moment for the game. And I wonder why they can't seem to get this right about commuting to their players' excitement and enthusiasm. Because there hasn't been a lot of excitement and enthusiasm out of CCP in the last couple of years.
Well, in all honesty, they're trying to fix problems from the few years before that. And there isn't much exciting out of it until you get to the end of this process. That's when, this is just a rough time for everybody, period. They're trying to get through it to get the game back to a healthy ecosystem, but it's rough.
So, like, here's something that's important to remember, because CCP said this, and this is Vily, hi. So, CCP said this publicly, like, they didn't do a perfect job communicating this, but they thought they had a model with the introduction of the crab beacons, where they could put something on Sissy, they would give players a month or two to rip it to shreds, tear it apart, rebuild it, from the ground up with feedback, because the CSM, like, we are all able to see a ton of stuff that is wrong with these things, and we do our best to fix them. But 1,000 viewpoints is much better than 10 viewpoints. And the crab beacon, we had a ton of feedback we pushed in before it went on Sissy, and then it went on Sissy, and it got ripped to shreds and torn back up bit by bit. And the module and content we have today with the crab beacon is a very, I don't want to say it's perfect, because it's definitely not, but it's very close to a decent product. And I think CCP saw with that model that they would do with this patch, which is that they would put all of the stuff on Sissy, players would tear it apart, and they would be able to put out a good product at the end of it, after feedback, to a degree, which is sort of what happened, except this time the players reacted really viscerally, with a lot of lead reactions, I guess you could say, and this created a situation where they just couldn't restabilize, and then they're not sure how to kind of work after that, I guess.
All right, let's just talk amongst ourselves. I'm going to try to get out of the way so that I'm the least of the voices that need to be heard from. Suitonia did a lot of work on this patch, knows it well. Vily did as well, and Kenneth did as well. So there's 3 people who are heavily involved with the stuff that's been going on CSM. And Dunk last year was a CSM member himself, so feel free to.
2 years ago, I think, right? You were in 14, Dunk. Yeah,
time flies.
16 now. Yeah. Yes.
Something happened last year. I just don't remember.
Yeah, we were like the last plane out of Reykjavik
right.
just before the.
No joke.
Yeah, I mean,
I remember.
Vily and I were both worried we were going to get quarantined, and we both had like 2-week packs of what it meant to be quarantined before we were flying out.
I remember being worried about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing about this patch. As I said before, you got to see the raw dev blog, no CSM input required or desired. And then you got to see the changes over time, specifically because you had the update type thing. So you got to see some CSM influence in there, some player influence, that kind of stuff. For the industry update, all you saw was the end product. Imagine what that dev blog looked like when it was raw. Just look at the difference between what you saw initially here and what actually came out, and then kind of apply that same logic to the industry dev blog if you really want to have a little nightmare on Elm Street tonight when you go to bed.
So, Tonya, how do you feel about the patch? Where's it at? What are you hearing out there, if anything?
I mean, I kind of feel like the patch is probably in a good place right now, personally. There are still a ton of issues that CCP have postponed with the compression stuff, and it's unfortunate that the gas and the Munor compression got delayed. But I think it's important for them to do it right rather than to do it fast.
And you think a little more time is needed to do it right?
Yeah, the way that they had it with like ammo and scripts and basically how the old Rorqual used to be before they changed it. It's really funny because a lot of people were posting that old dev blog from like 2014 where they got rid of the old form of compression for the instant compression, and then they kind of brought that system back.
Well, the old system used build jobs. So if your Rorqual pilot actually accidentally put in some build jobs to, manufacture stuff that you mined, then you couldn't compress at all. And
so it's even worse.
Right, yeah. And you had to have, 8,000 blueprints in your fleet hangar in order to use compression, because each compression job required a separate blueprint. So, and you had a blueprint for all 15 ores plus mercoxin. So it was just absolutely brutal. At least with the ammo, you could just load it up and press the button and let it go. It's just that it took 80 some hours to compress the R64 from one moon that took, an hour and a half to mine. That's the main issue with the new compression. Yeah, I mean, that's not even tedium. That's just like, 3 days of logging in just to compress something took you an hour to mine. And oh, by the way, they've mined out 4 other moons since then.
How did they get that so, let's say, wrong? How did they miscalculate that so much? What was the trade-off they were going for?
What do you mean, sorry?
I can't answer that question. CS kind of got an overview of compression, but we didn't get numbers until like almost right before it went on. And I knew what was going to happen, but like I said, input not required or desired. They wanted to go with their system, and then, now we're changing.
And with it, again, the idea of having a module that you activate to do the compression task in and of itself isn't a bad idea. It's the way it was implemented with all of the ore moving between different holds. The cycle would not auto-repeat itself. The amount of time it took for the cycle, the manual loading from only one way.
The fleet hanger loading, etc.
All of that, like the execution of the idea was poor. It's not a bad idea to have, hey, I need to fit this module because I'm going to be compressing this kind of modules. But the way it was done, like it's like the bad apple in the barrel poisoned the whole thing. So now, no matter what they release about compression, if it's not instantaneous like doing it in Athenor, people are going to be like frustrated with it, which is a difficult thing.
If it auto load, if you have ore in your ore hold and you can right click the compression module, load not Veldspar, but load Arcanor and hit the button and make it run and have it run a bunch of cycles and put the compressed ore right back into your ore hold. It's fast. It can keep up with several hulks because one Rorqual and one Hulk is just not. I mean, you've got to keep up with 6, 8, 10 hulks easily, and it'll auto load, and then you press the button again. That runs another 10 or 15 cycles. I think that's probably a middle ground, but I agree with you. In 2014 or whatever it was, when we got instant compression, I don't know that we're going to get that genie back in the bottle.
I kind of wish we do, though.
Yeah, I do too, but the modules are going to have to be damn close to instant in order to get that genie back in the bottle.
Yeah, I kind of feel like the whole point of compression taking time is to put ships in space to make them vulnerable. But I think it just makes it feel too terrible. I think if you have a compression thing active, it's just instant, and then you have the compression active for like 60 seconds or 2.5 minutes or however long it is for the core, then you're vulnerable during that time. I think that would be like a far better system, rather than. I mean, sure, people would like have a freighter like ready to go next to something, but the thing's still at risk, and people can still gank them if they catch it.
Isn't compression something of a time saver because you put a lot more minerals on one ship and you only make one trip? Isn't that a huge time saving discount? And why don't you have to pay for that in some way?
Well, you're already paying for it in the loss of the material you're compressing. So up until now, compression has been a completely lossless thing. So what they added was lossy compression, I'll call it. And which saying the trade-off for you being able to move this material is you will lose some of the material. So in my mind, in and of itself, having lossy compression is the trade-off I am making is my logistical movement is easier at the cost of I don't get so much of the product. Now, when you add on top of it the loss of the product with the enormous time effort that the first design had, that's when it becomes very unpopular, right? And so I think to address your thing of it should be a trade-off to make it easier to move, that's already in lossy compression in itself for these high-value gases and moon ores.
Yeah, I feel like during the system we had as of actually technically we still have, it's kind of problematic where you're right, there is a cost to compressing, but the reality is that compression cost is basically irrelevant, right? Like, everybody compresses all ore you have because there's just no point in having the ore be not compressed. The movement of it is so important. But I think CCP went not just like a football field too far the other way, but like 2 or 20 football fields the wrong way. And like there's a little bit of room, but not much for making it slightly more trade-offy, I guess you could say.
The other part with the compression is it was only going to be on Rorquals. And who needs the moon compression the most? It's HiSec, because that's where it's the most onerous to move those large amounts of ore. I mean, in nullsec, you can just shotgun freighters around and move 50, 60, 70 million cubic meters of ore.
Some groups can throw freighters around nullsec. The majority of nullsec players that aren't in a super umbrella can't move freighters through nullsec easily.
Well, some single players can move freighters around. I don't think it's a
in nullsec. You're going to move freighters around and not be under a super umbrella. Is that what
sorry,
you're saying?
I thought you meant jump freighters, but yeah, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have our super umbrella up all the time. If I get caught in my Titan, I'm pretty sure I'd be dead. I wouldn't expect to be saved by anybody. I shotgun 16 freighters at a time all the time. I do them to a beacon too.
Yeah, but
I just don't even care.
I would offer that you're not the typical industry player.
And you also do not have a big pile of NPC, nullsec space in range of where you're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, that all factors in for sure. But nevertheless, moving around that amount of material in nullsec isn't nearly the problem that moving that amount of material in highsec is. So the moon compression bypassing highsec, I think, is also a big loss that CCP hadn't thought of completely. Having the Orca be able to do moon compression is a big overlook. That was the point of the comment.
All right, so that's compression. That is tabled to January at least, when they take a second look at it and rework it. So compression's off the table right now. What about the stuff that's actually in the patch that you think actually was improved over time with the help of the CSM?
I'd say the exuberant bar GHP thing was definitely something that we all pushed for.
I think Dunk has something to say about that.
I think Tony, you might be correct. Yeah.
I think the skill redo, while a little painful to go re-inject all the skills, is a huge thing, right? It makes it much more straightforward with the mining and resource skills. Is a positive step forward that I guess some people could possibly be upset with that, but that seemed like a hugely positive thing that was like very low in the dev blog being announced. And that seemed to be a really, very few people have any issues with it other than that first half hour you need to redo all your processing skills. That was, I think, a huge improvement to a very complicated system.
Can we call that Feldistry?
No, the Feldistry is already... I asked those guys to make up a new name, and they're like, oh, no, we like that change. We're not going to give you a name for that. And I was like, oh, frick.
All right. Well, Kenneth had a lot to do with that change. That's why it's like, and he doesn't have, he's not the author of the other stuff that he gets named after, but he is the author of that sort of a thing. So that's where that joke comes from. So you do like the skills and how they've been rearranged, and people did get a huge reimbursement of skill points they don't have to use for industry. They can use it for something else. It's like 9.8 million. Nick, you're still here, right? Did you get some skill points back?
Yeah. My main, well, it was my null Rourke pilot, the perfect pilot out there. When everything came back, it was 9.2 million skill points. And then, of course, the cost for the books. So it literally cost me 15 minutes of time to get it all back where I wanted it. So not an issue.
And you had some change after you reinvested, right?
Yeah, I didn't want to mention that. But yeah, there were still a few skill points left over that I was kind of pleased about.
Yeah, the only pain in the arse one, I think, was the Abyssal Ore thing, because to get the skill book again, someone needed to buy it from the LP store or the ones that were already like in people's inventories or on the market.
Yeah, some of us spent a fair bit of money on Rakavine and the other processing skills, so it is a little annoying to see those go away and then, be replaced by a different one that we have to spend 60 mil on. So, but that's life, I guess.
Oh, did the price spike for that, by the way, or is it NPC priced?
No, it was an entirely new skill book, right? So
they're not NPCs.
It comes from a Triglavian LP store.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You can't inject it in space. You have to physically go to Jitter and buy it.
5 minutes after the patch, and all the orders got dropped for all the old books, right? So 5 minutes after the patch, I think the Abyssal Ore book was a little over 200 million. And I waited till this weekend and bought it, and it was 32 million.
Ouch. Yeah. Okay. I could see how that was the one hiccup. Everything else worked out fine. you could do it the safety of your own station, but that's funny. All right, so that was another facet of it. What's the gas and ice situation like now? Does that look like it's going to prices going up, going down?
Most likely going down for ice. For gas, I think it'll probably go down eventually once people start building the new the mining barge and exhumer exclusive gas harvesters. CCP removed a lot of the bonus sites that they added in an earlier patch, but they have doubled all of the gas in the existing ones. And I believe with if you use a Hulk with the new Tech 2 the gas harvesters now, they changed the old ones to be called gas scoops. I think it mines like 60% more than the previous Venture, which was the best one before, the Venture Prospect with links. So hopefully that means that the yield should be quite a bit higher.
I have a question for Dunk. How do you like the ABC crystals? Do you think that was added a little bit more gameplay in there?
Yeah, I think it gave some player choice do you want to mine fast and maybe waste more, or do you want to kind of maximize the total resource? I personally don't see a lot of this kind of PvP. I'm going to go take the Type Cs and go attack somebody's thing. I mean, it's a very interesting emergent gameplay concept. I don't know if it's going to see any real significant usage.
It already has.
Yeah, it already has.
Tissue deleted all the Monzonite off of a frat moon in about 25, 30 minutes the other day. They had a porpoise and a bunch of coveters and deleted 8-9 billion in Monzonite.
Well, there you go. I mean, if Tissue does it, it must be the way the whole Eve is going to go.
Yeah, they're kind of an edge case.
I'm just saying that's first. I'm not saying it'll happen again, but I was shocked when I saw them do it the first time. But it's, if you find some low hanging fruit out there, that's a good way to deny your enemy 6, 8, 10 billion hanging out there.
Well, I think it could be nice for the gankers too. Eventually, Type C crystals will give a suspect timer. It's not in the game right now, but I think CCP posted in the forum that it'll probably be sometime in January. But it could be a good way to bait and kill people in high sec and at least still return some of the. There's a lot of gankers who are really upset about Hulks having 60k EHP now and Mackinaws having 80k EHP. But hopefully that'll bring back the old Jet Can, griefing kind of gameplay where you take out a battle procurer and you Type C some guys moons in high sec, then they come to kill your procurer, then you kill them, that sort of thing.
If only I could hit a point.
But Dunk, was there something else about the Type A, B, C mining lasers that you like?
No, I while I come across being very passionate about these changes, I think in my blog that I wrote and what I say publicly is the initial concepts of what residue wastage and the lossy compression, all those things, the changes to crystals, all this kind of stuff, they're not inherently bad. It's just there's a stumbling on the execution and the communication that, as someone who's been on the CSM and then had to watch after leaving the CSM, I would like CCP to strengthen those capabilities of that initial execution where the blueprints are on the market, the skills are available, all that kind of stuff. Because some little thing like that can turn somebody's mind where they just they're going to write the whole thing off. And that initial impression is a key part of making something successful.
Oh, this patch was definitely buggy for sure. On patch day, there was the known issues thread was over a page and growing by the minute. It was also one of the largest downtimes that we've had in several years, and touched more of the game than even the industry patch. So I don't know. I'm not a coder type guy. I don't know what the metric is there for that. But the fact that they didn't scramble anyone's brains and all that kind of stuff, I'm kind of thankful for, because that's a lot harder to recover from. But there were seemingly a few rookie mistakes there for sure.
So big patch, it gets worked out relatively quick. Is it in a stable place now, or are there still bug reports that are being?
There's still issues.
I just want to cover
ice respawning.
I just want to cover the hugest change that came out of this patch that is very underreported. and that is the Primate now has a role in the game. So this underutilized ship for years, almost a decade, of being subsumed by the Epithal finally has a place in its sun. And that, of course, should make the entire patch fantastic. But news outlets like you, Matterall, here, and INN, and all places have really not given this story, this huge story about the Primate, its due time.
We covered it the first day, but we haven't covered it since then.
That was something we covered. Even I remember that.
This should be a daily celebration. This should be a daily celebration.
Yeah, but half the people in the game don't even know what that ship is because it was given away so many years ago. It's like the Echelon. All of a sudden, I was looking around the other day for something, and I found a stack of 112 Echelons or whatever, and I'm like, good God, I wonder what happened to the data analyzers that went with these, and then I found them all in a can. But, yeah, it's just, yeah.
Stuff in the back of the closet. Chalk it up for that. But that's
this
great.
Is the back of the closet. This is the back of the upstairs,
the attic,
up in the attic somewhere.
In a chest with dust on it. Yeah,
exactly.
So, but Dunk, you're happy about that, right? Ships going to be used. You're going to see it out there.
I doubt besides me, anyone's going to be flying this thing around. But this game should be fun and quirky and have some of this stuff that's not all super serious business all the time, right? And I think making gestures like this, not just for stuff I've campaigned for, but making other kind of goofy stuff in this game is part of the quirkiness of EVE that I appreciate. So I'm glad that they're remembering to not make everything so serious business, health, ecosystem, that kind of stuff. That this game should be fun. There should be lots of laughs.
This game has always been serious. This game isn't a fun game, and it's for incredibly hard laughs and incredibly tight moments. As far as I'm concerned, that's my perspective on EVE Online. But to me, it's a very serious game, and I feel like
I agree. But there's a ton in the past. We had a ton of meme items, the special edition commodities that were commemorated goofy moments in the game. Things like that, it adds to a little bit of spice and fun, and we've been a little bit not so much of that lately. And I would love to see a return. I would love to see a return of a little bit of goofiness in this game.
I don't know. I got some goofy salvage drones.
The Dunk drones, yeah. Okay, that's stuff that turns me off. It turns you on. Look at us. But so there's different things for different people. The thing I want to get back to, here's a question, by the way, from Hirr. Let's tackle that first, is the CSM. Do you think that the rough draft approach that was described will be repeated?
No, he said, should it be repeated? And I think it should, because it gives people kind of a glimpse into where we start and where we end up.
I also think it's the best situation. It's the situation that gets the best overall adjustments to the patches. If you look at, as they say, the Crab Beacon, which is where they first really tried this, the Crab Beacon's come out pretty well, right? Like it's come a long way from where it started to where it's at now. But the product is pretty solid, right? Obviously, it's not where it could be or should be necessarily in its final stage, but there's definitely a very significant amount of progress that it's made from its initial position. And I think you get that when you are able to engage the community and get a full gamut of feedback. The CSM, as I say, there's a lot of players with a lot of good knowledge there, but there's only 10 of them, and that's always going to limit your ability to fully fix every problem, see it from every angle, etc. Right? People often, harp about, the power of different voices and different opinions, and this is a great opportunity to, just show how effective it is. Unfortunately, the way that this was handled or sorted, or however you want to say it, in this situation, has definitely likely reduced the likelihood of that happening again.
Why? Didn't CCP have a great time with this?
Well, no, you had a segment of the community which kind of weaponized the situation, and it's highly unlikely you will see CCP do it again because of that, I would think.
You're talking about the Jita riots, let's call them riots. I was in Jita the other day, by the way. I think it's 2,200 people, and I think it was a weekday. So that's 1,800 people from the cap. So the idea that 6,500 people were rioting in Jita, erase that from your mind. That didn't happen, at least simultaneously.
Well, there was never more than 4,000 people in system. CCP confirmed that very clearly.
On a regular day, Jita's 2,000. So it's not that much to stick 1,000 people back in there. But that given, there's still people like Dunk and others that he represents that had a tough time with this, and I think put some tough language towards CCP. And you think that has shied them away from maybe doing this again?
If you say, let's put it out pretty raw and let people fix it, and then when you give people the opportunity to fix it, they very viscerally attack you for it not being ready to go, then my assumption is, they're not going to do it that way again.
And honestly, I didn't hear Dunk's stuff up until now, other than a little bit around the fringe. But there's a way to do it and a way not to do it. There are some out there that are just absolutely just, as Vily said, just flat out attacking. They're giving no solutions other than this is dumb and just going completely nuts. And that doesn't do anybody any good. But then there's others who took the time to give extremely valuable feedback. And you've got to determine, hey, if we put this out early, is getting that little bit of valuable feedback worth all of the noise that these people over here are making? And if you find that effective, then do it again. If you just don't want to deal with the people just going absolutely losing their minds, then don't. In the end, I don't think what we have on TQ today is significantly different one way or the other.
Than from where it started?
No, than where it would have been if they hadn't have put it out early and you never saw the raw. All you saw was the more polished version versus raw and unpolished.
Yeah. Like I've heard different, the CSM thanked and all that. And I'm, as you know, someone who is very skeptical of the CSM, even when Dunk was on it. But I've always said that I don't really trust the CSM. I feel like they're bending the game towards their constituencies and that sort of thing. But I also know, at least for you three guys, and I've seen them get thanked and everything else because they're visible community representatives. And so I thank them for taking bullets. But you guys actually are some of the better maybe the best number crunchers in the game on CSM. I've got to think that the CSM actually really helped this time, especially the people who actually deserve the credit, you guys.
Debatable. There were some harsh words said, some loud yelling happening, but
some tears.
Sure.
I meant that in a soap opera way. What? Say it. Say it.
Well, I'll say it. I don't think it's effective. Like screaming and yelling usually isn't effective in making the change you want. Right?
It was effective here. I had to no, never mind.
No, it is not. If you want something screaming at someone is not the way.
Yeah, being on the CSM is basically being in a business meeting. And in a business meeting, unless you're in Hollywood, there shouldn't be a lot of screaming and yelling going on. So I don't think it's super effective technique, right? Facts, figures, surveys, that kind of stuff can help make your point across. Being logical and rational and appealing to what the goal of the entire effort is can be useful. But screaming and yelling, usually we're all humans and people get defensive and they want to push back when they're getting attacked. So I haven't found it to be a very effective thing. I can get passionate here because we're just the players, right? We can rant and rave, but if I was in a meeting with CCP, I would try not that I always did that, not be as passionate as I am on these shows.
That's great. So strong, you're putting forth, but what I think bothers me, and we have people in our audience who would disagree with me, and I welcome that, is that when you co-opt everybody else and say this is what everybody wants, I already am skeptical because this game is multiple games. Different people have different opinions.
I hear what you're saying, and I know you have your opinion about the CSM aligning the game toward their in particular group's goals. And I think if you still have that concern, you should talk to Omeka Gold, who came in to the CSM with that same opinion. I think when he walked away, he's the best person to ask for, are the quote null groups getting their way and pushing the game in their direction? And at the time, maybe it's changed, his opinion, it wasn't, at least the time we served together on the CSM. So I know that's a common view, but a lot of the time what the CSM does is has to, in the room, in the 5-10 minutes they have with the dev, say, I think this is how it might be abused, or did you think about this consequence, or what about this use case? And then the developer can say, we hadn't considered that. And then that's the optimal way this should work. And that usually isn't to reinforce one style of gameplay. It's just like, how I, as a min-maxing gamer, would I change or utilize this proposed game design?
Look, I'll just put it on the table and tell you guys that when I look at the CSM, I do see a fraction of it, half of it, really, that is just they're just bumps on a log, right? Vince Strachan, who I like personally, but he was on CSM and too busy to really be there. That's okay. Just didn't really do much. NC has notoriously put in bad reps that come in and just kind of sit there. You look at Goonswarm guys, right? Merkel Chen and Anominate, I'll put Brisk aside for a second. They don't even answer their own guys' questions. Like, people in their own team will write them and they don't get answered. That's just for leadership. Those guys are just there for leadership. And I mean, talking to their own leadership. Whereas Brisk is a community guy because that's his shtick. So he's out there answering all these questions and stuff. I don't know how much input he actually gets in the CSM meetings or if he's still listened to, but I do know that he's out there asking people and trying to trade information back and forth for whatever reason. That's half of the CSM already. The other half, I feel, aren't necessarily, they're not necessarily wanting to bend it in their way, but that's all they know because that's their gameplay. And that's why I think you need a diversity on CSM of people who are like you guys, either really tight number crunchers or really good at communication. But that's just me. You guys can defend the CSM if you want. All right.
I can tell you this, the industry patch made my life a living hell. But Nick is one of the things I'm most proud about for the industry patch. He had to change the way that he built a little bit, but he's making as much ISK or more now in HiSec after he tweaked kind of the things that he's done and taken advantage of the new opportunities that were provided to him. And he still won't sell me any materials.
Hell no, I don't sell null blocks. What are you, crazy?
Well, all right. And so that's one of the things is we have talked to people who are not necessarily in null. Actually, they are in nullsec, but they're like they're independent, or some people are even low sec and stuff. And a lot of the miners that we talk to that talk to us, we don't go and pick them, do like where this ended up. So you guys did a good job. CCP did a good job. You guys did a good job. And there were definitely bumps in the road, and there's still some things wrong with it, and there's still bugs, but it seems to be getting worked out. And that's not to say that we appreciate what CCP does all the time. Lots of disagreements with the way CCP is developing the game. I have since 2011, where I feel like it went into this incredible focus on balancing as opposed to feature building and world building and stuff that you could talk about as opposed to stuff that you could play, right? But that's their decision. And I didn't like it, but that's that. We don't defend CCP just to defend them because we like them or whatever else. Like we just critique different things. But I brought you guys in because you guys to me are some of the guys that really put in a lot of the actual work. And so that's why I wanted to hear from you guys what it was like. And Dunk, who I appreciate because he is, like more passionate than a dog on your leg, when you visit your friend's house, is somebody who's not afraid to talk to anybody.
What a comparison.
You're not the dog. I just meant you're more passionate than that dog. And those dogs are pretty passionate. But you're not afraid of anybody. So it's nice to put you in here that, to be able to put forth that perspective. But you guys are all in the same room now, and I wanted you guys to talk to each other. Where are we here? Are we going to go to a better place when dynamic resourcing comes in? Or are people going to explode again? Or do you think people will kind of say like, well, we complained twice and twice it was kind of okay. Maybe we should like chill out.
Well, I'm hopeful for dynamic. The dynamic resource allocation, right? What they've alluded to is changes to the way the iHub system works, in which groups can tailor systems to produce the kind of resources they want at the expense of maybe not being so good at other resources that they have to sacrifice and that kind of stuff, right? So if they can pull that off and make it so that any space that could be held by a sovereign group could be improved to make that group more revenue or carve out their own niche, we start to move away from the this is good space versus that is bad space paradigm that we have, which kind of reinforces the kind of mentality of I will join the largest mega coalition I can because then I will have access to the best resources. So if they can do that dynamically and make the ability for groups to tailor their space to make it a little more profitable at the sacrifice some things, it should be a success. No matter what they do, people are going to complain. But long term, that helps avoid that your optimal choice is to join a mega coalition.
Dynamic resources. Somebody want to explain what that is theoretically?
He kind of just did. That's about the best definition. That's not NDA.
So since I'm not under, since I haven't been on the CSM since 14, I'll do my best guess because I'm not going to give any stuff that's being actively discussed away. So the idea in my mind, from what I've heard publicly, is that right now, when you go to an iHub, you can plug in modules that increase your ore capabilities of more anomalies or increase the amount of rats and the type of rats that spawn. There's some other ones that people don't generally use very much with wormholes and other stuff that never made sense and is a holdover from an earlier era. Imagine if you could go in and put a module in an iHub that said, I want better moon materials, or I want better ratting. I want effectively better TrueSec in my sovereign space. But what that means is these ore anomalies aren't going to spawn in my space. So I want this system to be a system for ratting and not a system for mining. Or I'm going to put in an iHub upgrade in that makes my planetary interaction much better, but ratting goes to 0. So I have harder ADMs to keep up, but I get a bonus on planetary interaction. And so the players, the alliance is making distinct choices about how they want to modify their space. And in theory, it makes it that they could have some really great systems where if they want to do carrier ratting, they could do it even in a place that was previously considered bad space with bad TrueSec, if that makes any sense.
That sounds very familiar. Like that to me is farms and fields theory, which came in 2015.
Well, again, EVE is a game of min-maxing and number crunching. And so you can look on a map and people can tell you this is the optimal system for ratting. This is a terrible system for ratting. And a lot of that stuff can only be changed so much. So if you go to a dynamic redistribution, something like that. The other option, which I prefer, would be a much more crazier thing, which is it's not predictable what you're going to get out of the moons. It's not predictable what you're going to get out of the anomalies. So I would love to see, hey, we're going to put in the wild mining laser, and when it pops, I don't know what ore is going to pop out of my moon, right? So it could be great, it could be crap. Same thing for anomalies. I would love to see you're not locked in that there's one policite moon in your entire region. That's the only one you get. I'd love to have some options that if you're willing to make some choices, you have the opportunity to get some different things in your space. That to me would be dynamic or in some ways random, right? Which goes back to one of the manifestos in the very beginning of all this thing, predictable inputs lead to predictable outputs. And right now with moons, I can tell you to the cubic meter exactly what's going to pop out of that moon after 3 weeks or 2 weeks or whenever the cycle is. So changing that up in some way. In my blog post, I talked about when you compress, maybe some good stuff pops out. Maybe, if you use some of these strip miners, you may get rarity things or terrible things. There's a lot of dynamic thing they could do, but that doesn't seem to be on the plate until they get to the next phase.
Well, I think nature should be the one that's dynamic rather than players cultivating the dynamic systems, but maybe there's room for all that stuff. I don't know. All right.
Well, why wouldn't, I just want to ask you, why wouldn't you want players having to make choices? I want my mining to be better and my ratting is going to be worse, or I want PI to work better, or why wouldn't you want that to be a player choice that they could affect aspire to, set a goal. Like, why would you want a purely random system like the storms that fly through?
Yeah, the other part with a random system is if you didn't like what you get, what do? You re-roll. So you kill your iHub, plant another iHub. Oh, what I get this time? Oh, that sucks. Kill the iHub, plant another iHub. What I get this time? And or you'd have to have two alliances where you go back and forth. One plants an iHub. Oh, I didn't get what I want. Blow it up. The next one throws one down, type thing. And it's just tedium type thing that everyone hates. Whereas if you can allow players to choose, then they get what they want, and you just have to keep it within reason.
Yes, I'll yield my time to the Mr. Nick Bison.
I was just mulling through my head, Dunk, on what you were saying about the potential of different types of iHub upgrades to target your area. And at first blush, I'm like going, yeah, that's kind of cool. But then you said something about it would enable a smaller group to, potentially increase area. How many small groups really have iHubs and enough space to where that would be effective? Like right now I can look at Tribute, and that's probably one of the few areas that makes sense to me in that context. Am I missing something?
Well, I lead an alliance of an awful lot of people. We're down to under a dozen systems we control in what's considered generally pretty bad space in EVE. I would love to be able to align my group to invest in our space to make the limited amount of space we have more valuable to them. So I think it would be more widely beneficial, and I think it would lead to more people not feeling they needed to pile up in the best places in EVE where it's the absolute most profitable, which leads to strategic alignment with larger and larger entities.
Yeah, hold on. I think you're right about people being able to cultivate their environment a little bit. That's, it is farming, and there's something really beautiful about that, especially when you're out in the wilderness. I think the reason I want nature to be more dynamic rather than people creating their dynamic situation is that dynamic situations imposed create creativity, basically, because you have to have creative solutions on how to survive. So I like people acted upon as much as I like people being able to act upon. Anyway.
Yeah, one thing about when he says small, I'm kind of putting words in your mouth, Dunk. Let me know if I'm wrong. But when you mean small for solve space, not necessarily small as in for like high sec, because you're one of the smaller null sec groups now or alliances.
I'm pretty sure he's just saying non-blocks.
Right. Yeah. Nick, he didn't mean small as in like high sec small. He meant small as in solve entities.
Yeah, I kind of caught that, but and I'm not sure how many folk are in the Brave group right now, but that's still a pretty good sized group, isn't it?
Yeah, we're good size. We just don't have a lot of space right now. And if you Jade Cougar is doing a podcast again, he's talking about trying to rebuild his corp and alliance and how they struggle to take any space at all just because revenue and PvP and stuff like that. So I think putting systems in place in which you don't have to be in a large coalition to get good revenue opportunities will be beneficial for the game. But obviously I'm biased from the situation we're in right now personally, but in my mind, dynamic redistribution would be something that just wouldn't be completely min-maxed by the largest groups and leave the smaller groups out of it.
I can see how a smaller group, and when I say smaller, I just pulled it up, like Brave evidently is like over 10, 11,000 people. Okay. Yeah. All right. Different scale than what I'm thinking. I was thinking in the under 2,500 group. And from a thing you had mentioned earlier about, the larger groups min-maxing it, I mean, I could, and the potential abuse of the mechanic. If that were allowed as an iHub upgrade, how would, that big entity just, with that umbrella go, okay, now we're going to just crank this up to 11. Absolutely
valid concern, but that's why I'm not a game designer and I'm just a commentator on it. I I mean, right now already, if you can afford to put in all the level 5 iHub upgrades, you're at an advantage to groups that aren't doing all the way up to level 5 iHub upgrades. So that already kind of exists now. The most powerful groups have, quote, the best space, and they're all fully upgraded right now. So they're already at that advantage. So is it possible to design a system that basically levels that out a little bit? I think it's possible to do. But I think that would be my goal for dynamic redistribution, is making all space have the potential to be better than what it is now, or worse, or whatever in some way. And that would make, hey, this is why everybody's not going to pile up in the same highly desired regions that don't switch ownership very often.
All right.
One thing now, the systems, if you have a good true sec, you can have massive mining. You get better ore because you get the 15% variant. You have the best ratting because you have the most anomalies. And you can put your Saudio there and build in that same system. With dynamic distribution, based on what you believe the system would be, that there'd be an iHub with some upgrades, the upgrades ostensibly wouldn't be limitless. There would only be a limited number of slots to plug that in. So the big groups now, who can have all their cake and eat it too, would have to choose ostensibly one of the three, maybe two of the three, maybe 1.5 of the three. So they wouldn't be able to have, now they have more systems, so they'd have to move out a little bit more. But for the smaller groups, like you're saying, with only 12 systems, you may not need but one industry system type thing and one PI system, and then the rest you can put the ratting to give your guys income, that kind of stuff. So I think based on what you were saying, you think dynamic distribution is going to come out being, would probably go towards the smaller groups a little bit more, but the larger groups have more space, but they also have more mouths to feed. So, and if you're talking small groups under 2,500, I think PL is more like 22 or 2,300 right now. We just recruited someone, so I'm not sure if we're over that, but we're more like the small group you're thinking of there, Nick.
Thanks for thinking of us. That's funny from PL. All right. Well, we're going to leave it there with the industry talk. The patch was out on Tuesday. Long downtime, some bugs they got fixed, and here we are a week later. A lot of people are testing it out, and really, some of them are enjoying it, and some people, I think, are still leery of it. Is there anything else? If not, let's go right to our shout out section, and why don't we start with Kenneth? You were here first.
I'm not really sure. I like the Snowball thing. So shout out to Commander I forget his name now. Sorry, but yeah, go do the Snowball thing. I won't be there because the police chases me too much. So, but yep, that sounds like fun.
Awesome. Suitonia, any last thoughts?
No, not particularly. I hope that CCP won't react to people who are, being very toxic, I guess, about the changes, and they continue to put it out in the best situation for us to be able to make changes to it and give them feedback.
Yeah, I gotta say, you always have such a demeanor of just never mind. I just think you're a really good guy doing really good work, and you're always kind of quiet about it. But anyway, Vily, you have any last thoughts?
Nope. Keep fighting the good fight.
All right. And Dunk, thanks for coming on. We just dragged you on from the audience. Good to see you again. Do you have any shout outs or anything you want to say?
Nothing super specific. I do miss that I didn't get to serve on the CSM with Suitonia, because I think his ability to know instantly what every ship does down to exactly the percentage of every trait and attribute is just remarkable. And hearing during the AT all that was just astounding. So that was the current CSM is lucky to have him on the team right now.
Oh, you could always run next year, Dunk, or this year, I mean.
Let's just get through the pandemic and the busyness of all that.
Right. Well, last question to all of you guys. Anyone going to FanFest?
Yeah, I am. Oh, hopefully.
We'll be there. Okay. Yeah.
Depending on the pandemic, I guess,
Yeah.
if there isn't like a resurgence of the rules and stuff.
That's too bad because it wasn't announced before Omicron was talked about. So it's up in the air again. Go ahead, Kenneth.
Yeah, I'm going to try, but that's a rough time of year for me. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, I was going to try to make it too, but it's all up in the air. If not, I definitely want to make 2023 because that's going to be 20 years of EVE Online, and that'll probably be a really good year to go to FanFest.
Hopefully, we have a Vegas this year. That would be really nice to have a Vegas this year.
Yeah. All right. Well, it won't be Vegas. It'll be San Diego or something. Who knows?
No. Screw Santa.
Different show. All right.
I'm holding out for Tampa.
All right, guys. Thanks very much. It's good to have you here today. It's a fun show. And thank you guys for watching Talking in Stations. We'll be back all week, this next week. So stay tuned and see you around. Fly safe.